Welcome to our comprehensive audio breakdown of Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? By Dr. Julie Smith, a book brimming with insights and practical tools to help you navigate life's mental and emotional challenges. Dr. Julie Smith, a clinical psychologist with over a decade of experience, distills the essence of therapy into this accessible and engaging guide. Whether you're dealing with low mood, stress, anxiety, or simply looking to enhance your mental resilience, this book provides actionable strategies for every stage of life. The book begins with Dr. Smith sharing an anecdote from her therapy practice. A young woman, initially crippled by fear and self-doubt, undergoes a transformation by learning simple but powerful mental health tools. At the end of one session, the woman remarks, "Why has nobody told me this before?" This recurring question from patients inspired Dr. Smith to write this book. It is not therapy in the traditional sense, but rather a toolbox filled with life skills grounded in psychological science designed to be useful for anyone, whether you're in crisis or just seeking growth. Dr. Smith introduces the concept that mental health, much like physical health, exists on a spectrum. Just as we don't wait to exercise until we're unwell, we shouldn't delay working on our mental well-being until we're struggling. The book is divided into practical sections, each addressing specific challenges such as low mood, motivation, grief, self-doubt, fear, stress, and finding meaning in life. Each chapter is filled with tools that you can apply immediately, whether it's a breathing technique to calm anxiety, a journaling prompt to explore self-doubt, or exercises to build emotional resilience. An important theme is the myth that experiencing negative emotions means there's something wrong with us. Dr. Smith explains that emotions like sadness, frustration, and fear are natural responses to life's events. However, she emphasizes that while we cannot avoid these feelings, we can learn to manage them. Just like physical exercise strengthens your body, practicing mental health tools builds emotional resilience, equipping you to bounce back more effectively when life throws challenges your way. Dr. Smith draws an analogy between building a house and managing your emotions. You wouldn't build a house with just one tool. Similarly, navigating life's ups and downs requires a variety of mental health strategies. For example, some days you may need mindfulness to help you refocus, while on others, tackling negative self-talk might be the priority. She urges readers to explore different tools, practice them consistently, and adapt them to their individual needs. This introduction also addresses a common misconception, that mental health work is for people who are broken. Dr. Smith makes it clear that mental health tools are for everyone. They're about building resilience and flourishing, not just surviving. She invites readers to approach the book with curiosity, treating it as a guide to better understand their own minds and emotions. In the next chapters, we'll explore the specifics of these tools and how you can apply them to different areas of life, starting with understanding and addressing low mood. Stick around as we unpack actionable strategies to not just survive but thrive in the face of life's inevitable challenges. Low mood is a universal human experience, yet many of us misunderstand its causes and how to deal with it effectively. Dr. Julie Smith opens this chapter by challenging the common belief that feeling low stems from an inherent flaw or malfunction in the brain. Instead, she highlights that low mood is often the result of unmet needs, external pressures, or even physical factors like poor sleep, dehydration, or exhaustion. To illustrate, Dr. Smith shares a relatable example from her own life. Imagine waking up after a terrible night's sleep. You're dehydrated, stressed about a looming deadline, and the blaring sound of your alarm jolts you awake. Before you've even started your day, your body is already flooded with stress hormones, setting the tone for feelings of irritation and dread. This shows how interconnected our physical, emotional, and mental states are. Understanding these links is the first step toward improving our mood. Dr. Smith explains that low mood, much like body temperature, is influenced by both internal and external factors. Just as you can put on a jacket to warm up on a cold day, you can take steps to shift your mood. While it's impossible to avoid periods of sadness or low energy, we can build a mental toolbox to help manage these moments. These tools are not magical fixes, but rather practical, evidence-based strategies that become more effective with consistent use. One of the most impactful concepts Dr. Smith introduces is the idea that emotions are constructed based on inputs from your body, mind, and environment. For example, your brain collects information from your physical sensations, like a pounding heart or tense muscles, your surroundings, like a messy room or an uncomfortable conversation, and your past experiences. It pieces these clues together to make a best guess about how you're feeling. If your brain detects a pattern of stress and discomfort, it might generate feelings of sadness or lethargy. Importantly, this process is a two-way street. While your mood influences your thoughts and actions can also influence your mood. To illustrate this, Dr. Smith presents the concept of the downward spiral. When you feel low, you're more likely to withdraw from enjoyable activities, overthink problems, or neglect your physical needs. This, in turn, reinforces the low mood, creating a vicious cycle. For instance, if you skip exercise because you're tired, you may feel even more lethargic and defeated, making it harder to find the motivation to exercise the next day. Recognizing these patterns is key to breaking out of them. Dr. Smith provides a practical framework called the cross-sectional formulation to help readers analyze and address their low mood. This involves breaking your experience into 4 components: thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, and actions. For example, if you're feeling down, your thoughts might sound like, "I'm so lazy. I'll never achieve anything." Your emotions might include sadness or frustration. Physically, you may feel tired or sluggish, and your actions might involve isolating yourself or procrastinating. Once you identify these patterns, you can make small changes in any of these areas to disrupt the cycle and improve your mood. An essential first step is cultivating awareness. Dr. Smith encourages readers to reflect on their day and pinpoint moments when their mood shifted. Ask yourself, what was happening before the low mood started? What thoughts were running through your mind? How did your body feel? What actions did you take or avoid taking? Over time, this practice can help you spot early warning signs of low mood and intervene before it spirals into something more serious. Dr. Smith also highlights the importance of addressing basic needs. Low mood often arises when we neglect essentials like sleep, nutrition, hydration, or social connection. For instance, skipping meals or staying up late scrolling through social media can leave you feeling drained, which your brain might interpret as sadness or defeat. Simple actions like eating a balanced meal or getting some fresh air can have a surprisingly significant impact. The chapter concludes with a toolkit for combating low mood. Here are a few actionable strategies. 1. Break the spiral. Identify one small action that counters the downward spiral. If you're tempted to stay in bed all day, challenge yourself to get up and take a short walk. 2. Practice gratitude. Focus on 3 things you're thankful for each day to shift your attention away from negativity. 3. Engage in positive activities. Even if you don't feel like it, do something you usually enjoy, such as listening to music or calling a friend. Often, the action itself will improve your mood. 4. Reflect and journal. Use prompts like, "What was I thinking and feeling when my mood shifted?" to gain clarity and control over your emotions. Ultimately, this chapter emphasizes that low mood is not a sign of personal failure, but a natural response to life's challenges. With the right tools and a willingness to experiment, you can learn to manage and even improve your emotional state. By practicing these strategies, you're not just alleviating low mood in the moment, you're building long-term resilience. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to harness motivation, even when you feel like doing nothing at all. Stick around for more actionable advice to keep moving forward. Motivation is often viewed as a fleeting feeling, something you either have or don't. But Dr. Julie Smith challenges this misconception, explaining that motivation is not a prerequisite for action but often a result of it. This chapter unpacks the science of motivation and provides strategies to help you take action, even when you don't feel like it. Dr. Smith begins by addressing a common frustration: the belief that you need to feel motivated before you can start a task. She debunks this myth with a simple but powerful insight: action creates motivation. Instead of waiting for inspiration to strike, taking even the smallest step forward can generate a sense of momentum that fuels further action. For example, if you're struggling to start exercising, Putting on your workout clothes or walking around the block can be enough to spark a chain reaction of productivity. A critical barrier to motivation is the overwhelming nature of big goals. Dr. Smith explains that when we focus too much on the end result, it can feel paralyzing. Imagine staring at the top of a mountain you need to climb. It's daunting. But if you break the journey into smaller, manageable steps, each one feels more achievable. This is the essence of her advice. Shrink the change. Instead of thinking about running a marathon, focus on putting on your running shoes. Instead of worrying about completing a report, commit to writing the first sentence. Dr. Smith also highlights the importance of creating structure to support motivation. Relying solely on willpower is a recipe for failure because it fluctuates based on factors like stress and energy levels. Instead, build systems and routines that remove decision-making from the equation. For instance, if you want to exercise regularly, schedule it at the same time each day. Over time, this repetition creates habits, making the desired behavior automatic. Another key strategy is to connect your actions to a deeper sense of purpose. Dr. Smith emphasizes that motivation is often strongest when it aligns with your personal values. For example, if spending time with your family is a core value, framing exercise as a way to stay healthy and active for your loved ones can make it more meaningful. She encourages readers to ask themselves, what's important to me about this task? How does it align with the kind of person I want to be? One of the biggest obstacles to motivation is perfectionism. Dr. Smith explains that perfectionism often leads to procrastination, as the fear of not doing something perfectly prevents you from starting at all. She advises readers to embrace imperfection and focus on progress rather than perfection. For instance, if you're learning a new skill, allow yourself to be a beginner. Celebrate small wins and view mistakes as opportunities to learn rather than as failures. Dr. Smith provides a toolkit of practical exercises to nurture motivation. 1. Start small, start now. Identify the smallest possible step you can take toward your goal and do it immediately. For example, if your goal is to write a book, open your notebook and jot down a single idea. 2. Visualize the process, not just the outcome. Many people focus on the end result, like crossing the finish line of a race. Instead, visualize the steps involved in getting their training runs, meal planning, or setting aside time for rest. This prepares your mind for the work required. 3. Set SMART goals. Goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. For instance, instead of saying, I want to get fit, set a goal like, I will go for a 20-minute walk 3 times this week. 4. Leverage rewards. Build in small rewards for completing tasks. For example, treat yourself to your favorite show after finishing a challenging work assignment. 5. Use accountability. Share your goals with someone you trust or work with a partner. Knowing that someone is checking in on your progress can keep you on track. Dr. Smith also discusses how to deal with setbacks. She reminds readers that losing motivation or falling off track is normal and doesn't mean you've failed. Instead, focus on restarting. Ask yourself, what's the next small step I can take? Even after a period of inactivity, one action can reignite your momentum. Finally, the chapter addresses how motivation is affected during major life changes, such as starting a new job, moving, or recovering from a loss. During these times, your energy may be focused on adapting to the change, leaving little room for motivation in other areas. Dr. Smith encourages self-compassion in these moments, emphasizing the importance of adjusting your expectations. Instead of trying to maintain the same level of productivity, focus on what's realistic and prioritize self-care. In closing, this chapter reframes motivation as something you can cultivate through deliberate action and meaningful connections to your values. You don't need to feel motivated to start, you need to start to feel motivated. Whether it's taking small steps, creating routines, or connecting your goals to a larger purpose, the tools in this chapter help you move forward even when inertia feels overwhelming. Emotional pain is an inevitable part of life, but Dr. Julie Smith emphasizes that it doesn't have to overwhelm or define us. This chapter explores how to confront emotional pain in a healthy way, offering practical strategies for managing it and even using it as a catalyst for growth. Dr. Smith opens by addressing a common reaction to emotional pain: the desperate wish to make it all go away. Whether it's heartbreak, disappointment, or grief, our instinct is often to suppress, numb, or avoid uncomfortable emotions. However, she explains that these avoidance strategies like overindulging in food, alcohol, or mindless distractions may provide temporary relief but tend to intensify emotional distress in the long run. Instead of avoiding emotions, the key is learning to process them constructively. A core concept in this chapter is the idea that emotions are not inherently good or bad, they're simply signals. They provide information about what's happening in our inner and outer worlds. For example, anger might signal that your boundaries have been crossed, while sadness could indicate a sense of loss or unmet needs. Rather than resisting these feelings, Dr. Smith encourages readers to become curious about them. What is this emotion trying to tell me? What can I learn from it? One practical tool she introduces is the pause and name technique. When emotional pain arises, take a moment to pause, breathe, and label the emotion you're experiencing. For instance, instead of saying, "I feel awful," try to be specific. "I feel sad, frustrated, or disappointed." Research shows that naming emotions helps reduce their intensity, giving you the clarity to decide how to respond rather than react impulsively. Dr. Smith also discusses the power of language in shaping how we experience emotional pain. She highlights the impact of catastrophizing language statements like, "This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me," or, "I can't handle this." These thought patterns amplify distress and make it harder to cope. Instead, she advises reframing your inner dialogue to include more compassionate and empowering language. For example, you might replace "I can't handle this" with "This is hard, but I've faced challenges before and will get through this." A particularly valuable section of the chapter focuses on self-talk. Dr. Smith explains that the way we talk to ourselves during difficult times can either soothe or exacerbate our pain. She encourages readers to imagine how they would speak to a close friend in distress and adopt that same compassionate tone for themselves. For instance, if you're beating yourself up over a mistake, ask yourself, "Would I say this to someone I care about?" Dr. Smith acknowledges that emotional pain can feel overwhelming, but she provides actionable strategies to help you stay grounded. 1. Use your breath. When emotions become overpowering, slow, deep breathing can calm your body and mind. Focus on inhaling for a count of 4, holding for 4, and exhaling for 6. 2. Anchor yourself to the present moment. When your mind spirals into past regrets or future worries, use grounding techniques to bring yourself back to the present. For example, identify 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. 3. Challenge negative thoughts. If you notice a thought like, "I'll never feel better," challenge it with evidence from your past. Recall a time when you overcame a difficult situation, reminding yourself that emotional pain is temporary. Another critical aspect of managing emotional pain is learning how to harness it for growth. Dr. Smith emphasizes that while pain is uncomfortable, it can also be a teacher. For example, a failed relationship might teach you about the kind of partner or boundaries you need in the future. Similarly, professional setbacks can reveal areas for growth or redirect you toward a path better aligned with your values. She also explores how to support others who are in emotional pain. Often, people feel helpless when faced with someone else's suffering, unsure of what to say or do. Dr. Smith advises that the most powerful gift you can offer is presence, listening without judgment or rushing to fix the problem. Simple statements like, "I'm here for you," or "It's okay to feel this way," can be incredibly comforting. The chapter concludes with an important reminder. Emotional pain is not something to be fixed or avoided, but something to be processed and learned from. Dr. Smith uses the analogy of waves in the ocean. Painful emotions, like waves, rise and fall. If you fight against them, you'll exhaust yourself. But if you allow them to pass, they'll eventually subside. The goal isn't to eliminate pain, but to develop the tools and resilience to navigate it. This chapter leaves readers with the empowering message that emotional pain, while challenging, can be a gateway to self-awareness and growth. By facing it head-on and using the tools provided, you can transform even the most difficult experiences into opportunities for healing and learning. Grief is one of the most profound forms of emotional pain, touching every aspect of our lives when we experience a loss. In this chapter, Dr. Julie Smith helps readers understand the nature of grief, debunk common myths, and provides practical tools for navigating its challenges. While grief is often misunderstood, Dr. Smith explains that it is a natural, albeit painful, process of adapting to life after loss. Grief is not just about losing a loved one. It can stem from any significant change or loss, a relationship ending, a job lost, or even moving to a new place. Dr. Smith emphasizes that grief is deeply personal, and there is no right way to grieve. The experience varies widely depending on the individual and the type of loss, which is why it's crucial to approach grief with self-compassion and patience. She introduces the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, not as a rigid sequence but as a fluid experience. People often move back and forth between these stages, sometimes revisiting them multiple times. For example, you might feel acceptance one day and then experience waves of anger or sadness the next. This is completely normal. Dr. Smith reassures readers that grief is not linear, and healing doesn't follow a specific timeline. An essential takeaway from this chapter is the difference between grief and depression. While grief involves deep sadness and moments of hopelessness, it often coexists with glimpses of positive emotions, like joy from fond memories or gratitude for shared experiences. Depression, on the other hand, tends to be more pervasive, dulling all feelings, both good and bad. Recognizing this distinction can help you understand whether you're experiencing healthy grief or need additional support for depression. Dr. Smith explains that the process of grieving often involves two key components: acknowledging the loss and rebuilding your life around it. To illustrate this, she introduces the concept of the tasks of mourning. These include: 1. Accepting the reality of the loss. This means confronting the fact that the loss has occurred, even if it feels overwhelming or surreal at first. This might involve attending a funeral, revisiting places tied to memories, or simply speaking about the loss. 2. Processing the pain of grief. Suppressing grief may provide temporary relief, but it prolongs the healing process. Allow yourself to feel the pain, cry if you need to, and talk about your feelings with trusted people. 3. Adjusting to life without what was lost. This involves adapting to a world where the person, relationship, or situation is no longer part of your daily life. It might mean taking on new responsibilities, creating new routines, or reevaluating your identity in light of the loss. 4. Finding a way to maintain a connection while moving forward. Grief doesn't mean letting go of everything tied to the loss. Instead, it's about integrating those memories and connections into your life in a healthy way. For example, keeping photos, sharing stories, or participating in rituals can help maintain a sense of connection while continuing to live. Dr. Smith offers practical exercises for navigating grief. One tool is journaling your thoughts and feelings about the loss. Writing can help you process complex emotions and provide a safe space to express things you may struggle to say aloud. For example, if you feel anger or guilt related to the loss, writing about these emotions can help you explore them without judgment. Another technique she shares is the pillars of strength approach. Grief can leave us feeling unstable, like a building missing key supports. Dr. Smith suggests identifying pillars in your life, things or people that provide stability. These might include close friends, family, a supportive community, or activities that bring comfort. For example, joining a grief support group or engaging in hobbies you enjoy can create a sense of structure and meaning. The chapter also touches on how to support someone else who is grieving. Dr. Smith cautions against offering cliched advice, such as time heals all wounds or everything happens for a reason, as these can feel dismissive. Instead, the best way to support someone is simply to be present. Listen without judgment, validate their feelings, and let them grieve at their own pace. Small gestures, like offering to cook a meal or accompany them on a walk, can make a significant difference. Lastly, Dr. Smith addresses a crucial point: seeking professional help when grief feels unmanageable. While grief is a normal response to loss, if it becomes so overwhelming that you can't function in daily life or it turns into prolonged grief disorder, it's important to seek the guidance of a therapist. Professional support can provide additional tools and strategies to help navigate particularly difficult periods. The chapter concludes with a message of hope. While grief never fully disappears, it can evolve into a source of strength and resilience. The pain of loss can coexist with moments of joy, meaning, and connection, allowing you to move forward while honoring what you've lost. Dr. Smith reminds readers that healing is not about forgetting, but about finding a new way to live alongside your grief. In the next chapter, we'll delve into self-doubt, how it impacts our lives, and how to build the confidence to overcome it. Self-doubt is something we all experience, whether fleetingly or persistently, and it often holds us back from reaching our potential. Dr. Julie Smith begins this chapter by explaining how self-doubt forms and why it tends to linger. It is frequently rooted in early life experiences, such as critical feedback from authority figures, social rejection, or unrealistic expectations placed on us by ourselves or others. Over time, these experiences shape an internal narrative, a voice that constantly questions our abilities and magnifies our shortcomings. Dr. Smith emphasizes that self-doubt is not inherently bad. In small doses, it can motivate us to prepare more thoroughly or improve ourselves. However, when it becomes pervasive, it paralyzes us, keeping us from taking risks or pursuing opportunities. For instance, you might hesitate to apply for a new job because you're convinced you're not qualified enough, even though your skills and experience meet the criteria. This hesitation, she explains, creates a cycle. The avoidance reinforces the belief that you're not capable, which in turn deepens your self-doubt. A significant part of this chapter is dedicated to recognizing and confronting the inner critic, the harsh, judgmental voice that fuels self-doubt. Dr. Smith explains that this voice is often shaped by fear and insecurity rather than facts. It thrives on distorted thinking patterns, such as catastrophizing or all-or-nothing thinking. For example, you might think, if I fail at this, everyone will know I'm incompetent, or if I can't do it perfectly, it's not worth trying. These thoughts amplify fear of failure and make it harder to act. To counteract the inner critic, Dr. Smith suggests several strategies. One effective approach is to create distance between yourself and the critical voice. She recommends imagining it as a separate entity or giving it a name. This helps you see it as just one perspective, not an absolute truth. For instance, when the thought "I'm not good enough" arises, you might say, "That's just my inner critic talking," which reduces its emotional grip. Another tool is to challenge the validity of negative thoughts. When self-doubt creeps in, ask yourself, is this thought based on evidence, or is it just an assumption? Dr. Smith encourages readers to reflect on past successes and moments of resilience as a counterbalance to self-critical narratives. For example, if you're doubting your ability to lead a project, recall a time when you successfully handled a similar challenge. By focusing on evidence, you can weaken the hold of self-doubt. Dr. Smith also emphasizes the importance of action in building confidence. She explains that confidence isn't something you're born with, it's something you develop through repeated experiences. Each small step you take reinforces the belief that you can handle challenges, even if the outcomes aren't perfect. For example, if public speaking terrifies you, start with small, low-pressure opportunities, such as speaking in front of friends or colleagues. Over time, these incremental successes build momentum and diminish self-doubt. She addresses the role of failure in this process, reframing it as a natural and necessary part of growth. Dr. Smith compares failure to learning how to walk. No child succeeds without falling repeatedly, and each fall is a step toward mastery. Similarly, she encourages readers to see mistakes as opportunities to learn rather than as proof of inadequacy. For example, a failed presentation might teach you how to prepare more effectively or manage nerves better next time. Self-compassion is another cornerstone of overcoming self-doubt. Dr. Smith explains that many people are far kinder to others than they are to themselves. She encourages readers to treat themselves with the same compassion they would offer a friend. For instance, if a friend made a mistake, you might say, "It's okay, you tried your best, and you can improve next time." Adopting this tone with yourself can soften the blow of setbacks and create space for growth. Criticism, both internal and external, is a key driver of self-doubt. Dr. Smith advises readers to distinguish between constructive feedback and unwarranted negativity. Constructive feedback, while sometimes uncomfortable, can help you grow. For example, a colleague suggesting ways to improve your work offers an opportunity for learning. On the other hand, vague or mean-spirited criticism often reflects the critic's own insecurities rather than an objective assessment of your abilities. Learning to filter feedback helps you focus on what matters and let go of what doesn't. Dr. Smith also highlights the importance of redefining success. Many people tie their self-worth to external achievements, making them vulnerable to self-doubt when things don't go as planned. Instead, she suggests focusing on personal values and the effort you put into your actions. For instance, if you value kindness, you might define success as treating others with respect, regardless of the outcome of a specific situation. This shift in perspective can help you build confidence based on internal validation rather than external approval. Toward the end of the chapter, Dr. Smith encourages readers to reflect on what it means to be enough. She explains that many people set impossibly high standards for themselves, believing they need to be perfect to be worthy of love or respect. His mindset perpetuates self-doubt and leads to constant striving without a sense of fulfillment. Instead, she invites readers to embrace their imperfections and recognize their inherent worth. Confidence, she explains, isn't about eliminating self-doubt entirely, it's about trusting that you can handle challenges, even with uncertainties and flaws. The chapter closes with a reminder that self-doubt is a natural part of life, not a flaw to be eradicated. By learning to quiet the inner critic, take action despite fear, and practice self-compassion, you can reduce its impact and move forward with greater confidence. In the next chapter, we'll explore fear and anxiety, how they hold us back, and the tools we can use to manage them effectively. Fear is a natural and universal response to perceived threats, both physical and emotional. In this chapter, Dr. Julie Smith explores the complexities of fear, why it exists, and how we can work with it rather than be controlled by it. While fear serves an evolutionary purpose in keeping us safe, it can also become overwhelming, hindering us from living a full and meaningful life. Dr. Smith begins by explaining how fear manifests in the body. It is part of the brain's alarm system, designed to protect us by triggering a fight, flight, or freeze response. When faced with an immediate danger like a car speeding toward you, fear helps you act quickly and decisively. However, the same mechanisms that protect us from physical harm can also overreact in less life-threatening situations, such as public speaking, social interactions, or trying something new. The brain perceives these challenges as threats, leading to the same physical and emotional reactions: a racing heart, shallow breathing, or a sense of dread. Understanding this is the first step to managing fear. Dr. Smith emphasizes that fear itself isn't the problem, it's how we respond to it. Many people try to avoid fear altogether, but this approach often backfires. Avoidance provides short-term relief but reinforces the brain's belief that the feared situation is dangerous. For example, if you avoid public speaking because it makes you anxious, you never get the chance to disprove the fear. Over time, avoidance can shrink your world, making you feel less capable and more trapped. To break the cycle of avoidance, Dr. Smith introduces the concept of approach with curiosity. Instead of running from fear, she encourages readers to explore it. This involves acknowledging the fear without judgment and examining what it's trying to tell you. For instance, fear of failure might reveal a deeper concern about disappointing others or not living up to personal expectations. By naming and understanding your fears, you take the first step toward regaining control. A crucial part of managing fear is learning how to calm the body's physical response. Dr. Smith offers several practical techniques to do this. One is diaphragmatic breathing, which involves taking slow, deep breaths that engage your diaphragm. This signals to your brain that you're safe, helping to deactivate the fight or flight response. For example, she suggests breathing in for a count of 4, holding for 4, and exhaling for 6. This simple practice can help you regain a sense of calm, even in highly stressful situations. Another technique is grounding. When fear feels overwhelming, grounding exercises bring you back to the present moment. Dr. Smith recommends focusing on your senses, what you can see, hear, touch, smell, or taste to anchor yourself in reality. For instance, noticing the texture of the chair you're sitting on or the sound of birds outside can help interrupt the cycle of anxious thoughts. Dr. Smith also explores the mental side of fear, particularly the role of catastrophic thinking. Fear often magnifies potential risks, making them seem far worse than they are. For example, if you're nervous about a job interview, your mind might jump to worst-case scenarios. What if I forget everything? What if they laugh at me? To counter this, she suggests challenging catastrophic thoughts with evidence. Ask yourself, what's the likelihood of this actually happening? Even if it does, what's the worst that could happen, and how would I handle it? This process helps reframe fears in a more balanced and realistic way. A key takeaway from this chapter is that facing your fears is the most effective way to overcome them. Dr. Smith explains that exposure gradually and repeatedly confronting what you fear helps rewire your brain. Over time, the brain learns that the situation isn't as dangerous as it initially seemed. For instance, if you're afraid of social situations, you might start by attending a small gathering where you feel relatively comfortable. As you gain confidence, you can gradually tackle more challenging scenarios, like speaking up in a group or meeting new people. She underscores the importance of pacing yourself during this process. Facing your fears doesn't mean jumping straight into the deep end. Instead, create a hierarchy of fear-inducing situations, starting with the least intimidating and working your way up. For example, if you fear flying, you might start by watching videos about air travel, then visiting an airport and eventually booking a short flight. This gradual approach builds resilience and reduces the risk of feeling overwhelmed. Dr. Smith also highlights how fear often stems from a desire for control. Many of the things we fear, illness, loss, failure, are beyond our ability to fully control. She encourages readers to focus on what they can control, such as their actions and responses, rather than fixating on uncontrollable outcomes. For example, if you fear a loved one's illness, focus on how you can support them rather than worrying endlessly about what might happen. Lastly, she addresses the fear of the inevitable death and loss. These existential fears are deeply rooted in the human experience and can feel overwhelming. Dr. Smith suggests reframing these fears by focusing on what gives your life meaning. Instead of letting the fear of loss paralyze you, use it as motivation to cherish the present and strengthen your connections with loved ones. For instance, rather than avoiding conversations about mortality, lean into them as opportunities to express gratitude and deepen relationships. The chapter concludes with an empowering message. Fear is not something to be eradicated, but something to be understood and managed. By confronting your fears with curiosity, calming your physical responses, and reframing your thoughts, you can transform fear from a barrier into a stepping stone for growth. While it takes courage and practice, every step you take toward facing your fears builds resilience and expands your capacity to navigate life's challenges. In the next chapter, Dr. Smith shifts her focus to stress, how it differs from fear and anxiety, and how we can turn it into a force for growth rather than burnout. Stress is an unavoidable part of life, but how we perceive and manage it determines whether it becomes a helpful motivator or a destructive force. In this chapter, Dr. Julie Smith explores the nature of stress, how it differs from anxiety, and the strategies we can use to harness its power rather than letting it overwhelm us. Dr. Smith begins by distinguishing between stress and anxiety, two terms that are often used interchangeably but are fundamentally different. Stress is a response to external pressures, like a tight deadline or a challenging life event. It tends to fade once the stressor is resolved. Anxiety, on the other hand, is more internal and persistent. It often involves worrying about potential future problems, even in the absence of immediate stressors. For example, the stress of preparing for a big presentation might subside after the event, but anxiety about your performance or others' opinions could linger long afterward. Stress itself isn't inherently bad. Dr. Smith introduces the concept of eustress, a positive form of stress that motivates us to take action and grow. For instance, the pressure to meet a deadline can push you to focus and complete your work efficiently. However, when stress becomes chronic, when it feels like there's no escape from mounting demands, it can lead to burnout, health problems, and emotional exhaustion. A significant part of this chapter is dedicated to recognizing the early signs of harmful stress. Dr. Smith explains that stress affects us on multiple levels: physical, emotional, and behavioral. Physically, you might notice tension in your shoulders, headaches, or a racing heart. Emotionally, you may feel irritable, overwhelmed, or unable to concentrate. Behaviorally, stress can lead to habits like overeating, avoiding responsibilities, or snapping at loved ones. The key to managing stress effectively is identifying these warning signs early and taking action before they spiral out of control. One of the most practical tools Dr. Smith offers is reframing how we think about stress. She cites research showing that viewing stress as a challenge rather than a threat can significantly reduce its negative effects. For example, instead of thinking, "I can't handle this workload," you might reframe it as, "This is a chance to test my skills and grow." By shifting your perspective, you change not only how you feel but also how you perform under pressure. Dr. Smith also emphasizes the importance of managing your body's stress response. Stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, triggering the fight-or-flight response. While this is useful in short bursts, prolonged activation can take a toll on your health. To counter this, she recommends activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's relaxation response, through practices like deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, or mindfulness. For instance, taking a few minutes to focus on slow, deliberate breaths can help calm your heart rate and clear your mind, even during a stressful day. Another key strategy is learning to identify and prioritize your stressors. Not all stressors are created equal, and trying to tackle everything at once can be counterproductive. Dr. Smith suggests breaking your stressors into two categories: things you can control and things you can't. For example, if you're stressed about an upcoming project, you can control how you prepare and allocate your time, but you can't control your boss's reaction. Focusing your energy on what you can influence helps you feel more empowered and reduces feelings of helplessness. Dr. Smith also discusses the importance of stress outlets. Physical activity is one of the most effective ways to release built-up tension. Whether it's going for a run, practicing yoga, or even dancing in your living room, moving your body helps process stress hormones and restore balance. Creative activities like drawing, writing, or playing music can also provide an emotional release and a sense of accomplishment. Social connections play a vital role in managing stress as well. Dr. Smith explains that humans are wired for connection, and sharing your feelings with someone you trust can be incredibly therapeutic. Simply talking through your stressors can help you gain perspective and feel less alone. For instance, venting to a close friend about a tough day at work can not only lighten your emotional load but also lead to practical advice or support. She also addresses the idea of good stress going bad. Even positive stressors, like starting a new job or planning a wedding, can become overwhelming if not managed properly. Dr. Smith encourages readers to approach such situations with self-awareness and balance. For example, if you're planning an event, delegate tasks and set realistic expectations for yourself rather than trying to do everything perfectly. One of the most empowering insights in this chapter is the idea that stress is a signal, not an enemy. Dr. Smith reframes stress as your body's way of alerting you to challenges and urging you to act. For example, if you're stressed about falling behind on a project, the stress is signaling the need to reallocate your time or seek help. Ignoring these signals often leads to more significant problems, but responding to them proactively allows you to address the root cause and move forward. Dr. Smith closes the chapter by emphasizing the importance of self-care in managing stress. This doesn't mean expensive spa days or elaborate routines. It's about consistently meeting your basic needs. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, and downtime are the foundation of resilience. For instance, taking a 10-minute break to eat a healthy snack or go for a walk can significantly reduce your stress levels and improve your focus. Ultimately, this chapter shifts the narrative around stress from something to be feared to something to be harnessed. By recognizing its signals, managing its physical and emotional effects, and taking deliberate action, you can transform stress into a source of strength and growth. In the next chapter, Dr. Smith explores how to build a life of meaning and purpose, offering tools to align your daily actions with what truly matters. In this chapter, Dr. Julie Smith shifts the focus from managing mental health challenges to proactively creating a life filled with meaning and purpose. While much of the book addresses how to cope with emotional pain, stress, and fear, this chapter emphasizes that mental well-being is not just about avoiding negativity, it's about actively building a life that feels worthwhile and fulfilling. Dr. Smith begins by explaining that a meaningful life doesn't happen by accident. It requires intention, self-awareness, and consistent effort. Many people chase happiness, assuming it comes from external achievements like career success, material wealth, or social recognition. However, Dr. Smith argues that happiness is not a goal to be pursued directly. Rather, it is a byproduct of living in alignment with your values and engaging in activities that bring a sense of purpose and connection. One of the key concepts in this chapter is the importance of identifying your core values. Values are the principles that guide your decisions and give your life direction. For instance, if you value kindness, you might prioritize helping others or fostering supportive relationships. If you value creativity, you might focus on expressing yourself through art, writing, or problem-solving. Dr. Smith explains that when our actions align with our values, we experience a deeper sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. Conversely, when we ignore or betray our values, we often feel disconnected and dissatisfied, even if we achieve external success. To help readers clarify their values, Dr. Smith suggests a reflective exercise. She asks, what matters most to you in life? What kind of person do you want to be? What do you want to stand for? These questions prompt readers to think beyond short-term goals and focus on the bigger picture. For example, someone might realize that they value adventure and personal growth, leading them to prioritize travel and learning new skills over material possessions. Dr. Smith also highlights the importance of small, consistent actions in building a meaningful life. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the idea of making drastic changes, but even small steps can have a profound impact over time. For example, if you value health, committing daily 10-minute walk can reinforce that value and build momentum for larger changes. Similarly, if you value family, scheduling regular phone calls or meals with loved ones can strengthen those relationships. Another essential element of a meaningful life is connection. Dr. Smith emphasizes that humans are social beings, and meaningful relationships are one of the most significant sources of joy and purpose. However, building and maintaining relationships requires effort. She encourages readers to be intentional about nurturing their connections, whether by expressing gratitude, offering support, or simply spending quality time together. For example, sending a heartfelt message to a friend or planning a weekend activity with family can create a sense of closeness and mutual support. Dr. Smith also addresses the role of contribution in creating meaning. Contributing to something larger than yourself, whether it's through your work, volunteering, or creative pursuits, provides a sense of purpose and fulfillment. For instance, someone who values environmental sustainability might find meaning in participating in community cleanup efforts or advocating for eco-friendly practices. Contribution doesn't have to involve grand gestures. Even small acts of kindness, like helping a neighbor or mentoring a colleague, can foster a sense of purpose. A critical part of this chapter is the acknowledgement that building a meaningful life isn't always easy or enjoyable. Pursuing your values often involves effort, discomfort, and sacrifice. For example, someone who values education might have to endure the stress of exams or the discipline of studying long hours. Dr. Smith emphasizes that these challenges are not obstacles to meaning, they are part of the process. She compares it to physical exercise. While it may be uncomfortable in the moment, it contributes to long-term health and satisfaction. Dr. Smith also discusses the importance of resilience in maintaining a meaningful life. Inevitably, there will be setbacks, failures, and periods of doubt. She encourages readers to see these moments not as signs that they are on the wrong path, but as opportunities to learn and grow. For instance, a failed business venture might lead to insights that inform a future, more successful project. She reminds readers that the pursuit of meaning is a lifelong journey, not a destination. Finally, the chapter addresses the role of gratitude in cultivating a meaningful life. Dr. Smith explains that while it's natural to focus on what's missing or what's going wrong, actively practicing gratitude shifts your perspective and helps you appreciate the positive aspects of your life. She suggests keeping a gratitude journal, where you write down 3 things you're grateful for each day. For example, you might note a kind gesture from a friend, a moment of laughter, or simply the comfort of a warm cup of coffee. Over time, This practice can rewire your brain to notice and savor life's small joys. The chapter concludes with a powerful reminder. A meaningful life doesn't require perfection or constant happiness. It's about aligning your actions with your values, embracing connections, and finding purpose in the everyday moments. Dr. Smith invites readers to take small, intentional steps toward the life they want to create, reminding them that the pursuit of meaning is not about reaching a final goal, but about living in a way that feels authentic and fulfilling. Next, we'll explore the final chapter, which ties together the lessons from the book and offers practical advice for maintaining mental and emotional resilience over the long term. Dr. Julie Smith concludes her book by weaving together the central themes and lessons, offering a roadmap for maintaining mental and emotional resilience throughout life's ups and downs. The final chapter serves as both a reflection on the tools presented earlier and a call to action for readers to apply them consistently in their everyday lives. Dr. Smith begins by emphasizing the importance of building your mental health toolkit proactively, rather than waiting for a crisis. Just as you wouldn't wait until your car breaks down to learn basic maintenance, you shouldn't wait until you're overwhelmed to start caring for your mental health. Each of the strategies in this book, whether it's managing low mood, addressing fear, or dealing with self-doubt, becomes more effective with regular practice. She urges readers to view these tools as ongoing habits, much like brushing your teeth or exercising. Central to this approach is the understanding that life will always involve challenges. Dr. Smith reminds us that emotional pain, stress, and fear are not problems to be eliminated, but experiences to be managed. They are part of what makes us human, and learning to navigate them is what allows us to grow and thrive. For example, facing fear or failure can feel uncomfortable in the moment, but these experiences often lead to the greatest personal growth. The key is to approach these challenges with curiosity and self-compassion rather than avoidance or self-criticism. Dr. Smith also revisits the idea of self-awareness as a cornerstone of mental well-being. Throughout the book, she has emphasized the importance of understanding your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. In this final chapter, she encourages readers to make self-reflection a regular practice. Whether it's through journaling, mindfulness, or simply taking a moment to pause and check in with yourself, cultivating self-awareness helps you recognize patterns, identify triggers, and make intentional choices. For instance, if you notice that stress consistently builds when you overcommit, you can begin setting clearer boundaries. Another key takeaway is the role of small, consistent actions in creating lasting change. Dr. Smith reiterates that you don't need to make drastic, life-altering decisions to improve your mental health. Instead, focus on incremental steps that align with your values and priorities. For example, if you're feeling overwhelmed, one small action might be taking a 10-minute walk to clear your mind. If you're struggling with low mood, starting a gratitude journal could help shift your perspective. These small actions may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time, they build resilience and foster a greater sense of control. Dr. Smith also highlights the importance of relationships in maintaining mental well-being. She reminds readers that human connection is one of the most powerful antidotes to stress, loneliness, and emotional pain. Whether it's leaning on friends during difficult times, celebrating small wins with loved ones, or simply reaching out to check on someone, nurturing your relationships is a vital part of a meaningful life. She encourages readers to prioritize connection, even during busy or challenging periods, as it provides a strong foundation of support. The chapter also touches on the inevitability of setbacks. Dr. Smith reassures readers that progress is not linear, and everyone experiences moments of struggle, doubt, or regression. What matters most is how you respond to these setbacks. Rather than viewing them as failures, see them as opportunities to apply what you've learned. For instance, if you notice yourself falling into negative thought patterns, use the reframing techniques from earlier chapters to challenge those thoughts and regain perspective. Dr. Smith leaves readers with a powerful analogy. Just as a physical fitness routine requires regular effort and adaptation, so does maintaining mental and emotional health. Some days you might feel strong and capable, while others might feel like a struggle, but every effort counts. The key is to keep showing up, even when it feels difficult. In her final words, Dr. Smith reminds readers that the goal is not to achieve a state of perfect happiness or emotional stability. Instead, it's about equipping yourself with the tools to navigate life's challenges with resilience, self-compassion, and a sense of purpose. She encourages readers to embrace the full spectrum of human experience, recognizing that even the most difficult moments can lead to growth, connection, and meaning. The book ends with an invitation to keep learning, experimenting, and building your toolkit. Dr. Smith emphasizes that mental health is a lifelong journey, not a destination. By taking small, intentional steps each day, you can create a life that feels authentic, fulfilling, and aligned with your values. This chapter and the book as a whole offers a hopeful and empowering message. No matter where you are in your journey, you have the tools to move forward. It's not about avoiding life's challenges, but about learning to face them with strength and courage. And that, as Dr. Smith reminds us, is something nobody told us before, but now we know. Smith, this book is more than just a guide, it's a practical toolkit for navigating life's challenges with resilience, self-compassion, and purpose. Whether you're facing low mood, self-doubt, fear, or stress, the lessons and strategies Dr. Smith shares remind us that we're not alone, and there are always tools we can use to take back control. Remember, mental health is a journey, not a destination. Progress isn't about achieving perfection, it's about taking small, meaningful steps every day toward a life aligned with your values. And the best part? Every moment, no matter how challenging, is an opportunity to grow and build strength. If you found this summary helpful, consider picking up the book to dive deeper into the exercises and strategies Dr. Smith provides. It's an invaluable resource that you can return to again and again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. Let us know in the comments what resonated most with you, or if there's another book you'd like us to cover next. Thank you for watching, and remember, small steps lead to big changes. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.